The marketplace at Krelnar Station buzzed with the noise of trade and chatter. Beings from countless alien species mingled, each tending to their own business. Amid the vibrant crowd, humans were a rare sight. Most were relegated to menial jobs, seen as weaker and less valuable than the advanced alien civilizations around them. Alex, a young human boy no older than 13, maneuvered carefully through the throng of creatures. His job was simple: deliver packages for an alien merchant named Grothak. The towering green-scaled Grothak had little patience for mistakes, and Alex knew better than to anger his employer. Carrying a crate of shimmering crystals, Alex was hurrying past a row of food stalls when something caught his attention. A cloaked figure sat slumped against a wall, her frail hands trembling as she reached out for scraps. Her hood concealed her face, but her thin, bony fingers spoke of hardship. The aliens passing by paid her no mind, some even sneering as they avoided her outstretched hand. Alex paused. He had seen beggars before, but something about this one made him stop. Perhaps it was the way she sat quietly, not shouting or pleading like others he had seen. Or maybe it was her hands, which shook not with desperation but exhaustion, as if they had carried a lifetime's worth of burdens. "Move along, human," barked a reptilian vendor, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Don't block my stall." Alex ignored him and set the crate down. He reached into his small satchel and pulled out a simple sandwich, his lunch for the day. It wasn't much, just bread and a thin slice of meat, but it was enough. Kneeling beside the beggar, Alex extended the sandwich. "Here," he said softly. "You look hungry." The figure hesitated, her trembling hands stopping midair. Slowly, she lifted her head, and Alex caught a glimpse of glowing, amber eyes beneath the hood. She took the sandwich carefully, as if it might shatter in her grip. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse but filled with an odd sense of dignity. Behind them, a ripple of laughter erupted. A group of aliens had stopped to watch the scene, their colorful robes and jeweled accessories marking them as wealthy traders. One of them, a tall, insect-like creature with iridescent wings, clicked its mandibles in amusement. "Look at the human," it sneered, "feeding a beggar. How fitting for their kind, always weak and sentimental." Another alien, a feline-like creature with sleek fur and sharp teeth, chimed in. "Why waste your food on someone like that? She's just garbage, not even worth the crumbs." Alex clenched his fists but said nothing. He wasn't the type to argue, especially not with creatures who saw him as little more than dirt. Instead, he turned back to the beggar. "Eat," he said gently. "Don't worry about them." The beggar lowered her hood slightly, revealing more of her face. Her features were delicate but gaunt, her skin pale with faint, glowing lines tracing across it. She studied Alex for a moment, her glowing eyes filled with an unreadable emotion. "You are different," she murmured, taking a small bite of the sandwich. Before Alex could respond, the group of aliens stepped closer, their laughter growing louder. "You think kindness will get you anywhere, human?" the insect-like alien jeered. "This is why your kind will always be beneath us. No strength, no pride, just pathetic gestures like this." Alex felt a wave of anger rise in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He didn't care what they thought. He had seen too much suffering in his short life to turn a blind eye. The beggar, however, raised her head fully now, her glowing eyes locking onto the group. "Perhaps," she said, her voice suddenly steady and commanding, "you should reconsider your words." The laughter stopped abruptly. The aliens froze, their smug expressions faltering. Something about her tone, or perhaps the way her glowing eyes seemed to pierce through them, left them uneasy. "Who are you to speak to us like that?" the feline alien demanded, though his voice wavered. The beggar didn't answer. Instead, she slowly rose to her feet, her frail form straightening as if a hidden strength was returning to her. The faint glow on her skin grew brighter, and the surrounding air seemed to hum with energy. Alex stepped back, his heart racing. Who was this woman? The group of aliens began to back away, their arrogance replaced with nervous glances. One of them muttered something about a disturbance and quickly vanished into the crowd. The beggar turned to Alex, her expression softening. "Thank you," she said again, but this time her voice carried a weight that made him shiver. "You have shown more strength than they ever will." Before Alex could respond, the beggar pulled her hood back up and began walking away, disappearing into the crowd as quickly as she had appeared. Alex stood there, confused and a little shaken. Around him, the marketplace seemed to return to normal, but whispers of the strange encounter began to spread. Little did anyone know, this moment would mark the beginning of something far greater than a simple act of kindness. The marketplace of Kromar Station had returned to its usual hustle and bustle, but beneath the surface, a ripple of unease spread among its inhabitants. Those who had witnessed the beggar's transformation whispered in hushed tones, their curiosity mingled with fear. Who was she? And how had a human boy, of all creatures, dared to help her? Alex, still shaken from the encounter, went back to his task of delivering Grothak's shipment. His mind, however, was far from the shimmering crystals in his crate. He couldn't forget the beggar's glowing eyes or the strange energy that had filled the air around her. She wasn't just anyone, Alex muttered to himself. The memory of her steady, commanding voice sent a chill down his spine. He had heard desperation before, in the voices of the downtrodden and the forgotten, but hers wasn't like that. It carried authority, as if she wasn't pleading for help, but acknowledging a gesture she already expected. As Alex made his way back to Grothak's stall, a new development caught his attention. A group of enforcers, hulking, armored creatures with sharp, glowing weapons, was coming through the marketplace. Their presence wasn't unusual, but their movements were purposeful, almost frantic. "They're looking for someone," Alex thought, instinctively stepping out of their path. One of the enforcers, a bulky alien with 3 eyes and jagged tusks, approached a vendor. "Have you seen a cloaked figure?" The enforcer growled. "Thin, glowing lines on her skin. She's dangerous. Report immediately if you spot her." The vendor shook his head nervously, but Alex's heart sank. They were looking for the beggar. As he reached Grothak's stall, the merchant's scaly face twisted into a scowl. "You're late," Grothak barked, snatching the crate of crystals from Alex's hands. "You think I pay you to dawdle?" "I'm sorry," Alex said quickly, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about the beggar. Why were the enforcers after her? "You're lucky I don't dock your pay," Grothak grumbled, waving him off. Alex slipped away, blending into the crowd as he retraced his steps through the marketplace. He didn't know why, but he felt responsible. She had thanked him, even praised him. But now she was in danger. He had to know why. As he searched for any sign of the beggar, a familiar voice stopped him in his tracks. "You're looking for her, aren't you?" Alex turned to see an older human man standing in the shadows of a nearby alley. The man's face was lined with age, and his eyes were tired but sharp. He wore a patchy coat and a wary expression, as if he had seen too much of the universe and trusted very little of it. "Who?" Alex asked, though he knew exactly who the man meant. "The woman you helped," the man said, stepping closer. "You're not the only one who noticed her. The enforcers aren't here by coincidence." "Who is she?" Alex asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. The man glanced around before answering. "They call her the Forgotten Queen. She vanished long ago, thought to be dead. But some of us remember the stories. She once ruled over a powerful empire, one that rivaled even the Galactic Council." Alex's eyes widened. An empire, but she was begging for food. The man smirked. "That's the point, kid. No one expects a queen to be sitting in the dirt. It's the perfect disguise. But if she's here, she's not hiding anymore. She's planning something." The word sent a shiver down Alex's spine. He thought back to her glowing eyes, her commanding tone, and the way the air had seemed to hum with energy. She wasn't just a beggar. She was someone powerful, someone dangerous. Why are the enforcers after her? Alex asked. The man hesitated. Because they're scared. If she's alive, it means she's rebuilding her forces. And if that's true, a storm's coming, one that could shake the galaxy to its core. Alex swallowed hard. He had only wanted to help someone in need. Now he was caught in something far bigger than himself. Before he could ask more questions, a sudden commotion erupted nearby. The enforcers had found their target. Alex and the old man darted toward the source of the noise, careful to stay hidden. Peering around a corner, Alex saw the beggar standing in the center of the square. Her hood was down, her glowing skin and amber eyes drawing gasps from the onlookers. The enforcers surrounded her, their weapons raised. "Surrender," their leader barked. "You're coming with us." The beggar didn't flinch. Instead, she raised her hand, and the energy around her intensified. The air crackled with power as a faint golden aura surrounded her. "You think you can control me," she said, her voice ringing out with unshakable confidence. Alex watched in awe as the enforcers hesitated, their resolve wavering. The crowd around them was silent, holding its collective breath. For the first time, Alex realized just how far out of his depth he was. This wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of a conflict that could change everything. The square was silent, the air charged with tension as the beggar, no, the forgotten queen, faced down the enforcers. Her amber eyes glowed with a fierce light, and the golden aura around her seemed to pulse with each steady breath she took. Alex crouched behind a stack of crates, his heart pounding as he watched the scene unfold. He barely dared to breathe. The old man who had spoken to him earlier was beside him, equally captivated. "This is it," the man muttered. "She's revealing herself." The leader of the enforcers, a hulking alien with dark chitinous armor, stepped forward, his weapon humming ominously. "You have nowhere to run," he growled. "Surrender now, or we'll take you by force." The queen didn't move. Her voice was calm, but carried an edge that cut through the air like a blade. "You speak of force as though it matters. Do you know who I am?" The enforcer leader sneered. "We know exactly who you are. A relic of a fallen empire. You're nothing but a ghost clinging to power that no longer exists." The queen's lips curled into a faint smile, though her eyes burned with cold fury. "If that's what you believe, then you've already lost." The enforcer raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the queen raised her hand. A wave of energy erupted from her palm, slamming into the enforcers and sending them sprawling. The force was controlled, precise, powerful enough to subdue them, but not to kill. Gasps rippled through the crowd. No one dared to move, their awe and fear locking them in place. "I have no desire for bloodshed," the queen said, her voice resonating across the square. "But I will not allow myself to be taken." The leader struggled to his feet, his weapon sparking uselessly in his hands. You won't get away with this," he snarled. "The council will hunt you down." The queen's expression hardened. "Let them try. Their arrogance blinds them. They forget the balance of power I once held. It seems they need a reminder." Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. Her words were both a warning and a declaration. This wasn't just an escape. It was the beginning of something far greater. The old man beside Alex nodded grimly. "She's making her move. This is no accident." Before Alex could respond, the queen turned her gaze toward the crowd. Her eyes seemed to pierce through each individual, as though she saw not just their faces but their souls. "For too long, this galaxy has been ruled by fear and greed," she said. "The council thrives on division, pitting species against one another for their own gain. But unity is more powerful than they realize." She extended her hand toward the crowd, her golden aura softening but still radiant. "You've forgotten what it means to stand together, to fight for something greater than yourselves, but I haven't forgotten. And I will remind you." The crowd stirred, whispers spreading like wildfire. Some looked inspired, others frightened. A few backed away, unwilling to meet her gaze. Alex felt a strange pull, an urge to step forward, but his feet stayed rooted to the ground. He wasn't sure if it was fear or awe holding him back. The Queen turned her attention back to the enforcers, who were regrouping, their movements slow and hesitant. "Return to your masters," she said. "Tell them the forgotten Queen has returned, and tell them their time is running out." With that, she lifted her hand again, and a shimmering portal of golden light appeared behind her. The energy crackled in the air, sending a faint breeze through the square. The enforcers didn't dare to move as she stepped through the portal, her figure disappearing into the light. In an instant, she was gone, and the portal vanished with her. The silence that followed was deafening. The crowd began to disperse, murmurs and speculations filling the air. The enforcers exchanged uncertain glances, their confidence clearly shaken. Alex finally stood, his mind racing. He had so many questions, but one thought stood out above all others. This wasn't over. The Queen had made her move, and the galaxy was about to change. The old man clapped him on the shoulder, snapping him out of his thoughts. "You were right to help her," he said, "but now you've seen the cost of getting involved." "What do you mean?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man's eyes were grave. "The council won't let this go, and if they find out you were the one who helped her, they'll come after you too." Alex's breath caught in his throat. He had acted out of kindness, but now he was entangled in something far beyond his understanding. As the old man walked away, Alex stood in the emptying square, his thoughts a storm of uncertainty. One thing was clear. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted, and he was caught in the middle of it. The square buzzed with rumors and uncertainty in the wake of the Queen's departure. People gathered in small groups, their voices hushed but urgent. The enforcers had withdrawn, their confidence shaken, and the once bustling market seemed to hold its breath. Alex lingered on the edge of the square, his mind racing. He couldn't forget the way the Queen had looked at him, a gaze filled with gratitude, but also a burden of unspoken responsibility. What had he gotten himself into? Near him, two merchants whispered to each other, their eyes darting around nervously. "She just vanished," one said. "Right into thin air. What kind of power does that?" "The kind we should stay far away from," the other replied. "Mark my words, the council won't let this go quietly." Alex's attention sharpened at the mention of the council. He had grown up hearing tales of their iron grip on the galaxy, their relentless pursuit of control. If they were as dangerous as the stories claimed, then the Queen's defiance had likely set off a storm. "Are you just going to stand there all day?" The voice startled Alex. He turned to see the old man from earlier, leaning casually against a pillar with a wry smile. "You're the one who said helping her was the right thing to do," Alex replied. The old man chuckled. "And I stand by that. But you look like a lost pup, lad. What's on your mind?" Alex hesitated. "I don't know what to do. She's gone, but it feels like she left something behind. Like I'm supposed to. I don't know, act or something." The man's expression turned serious. "She didn't just leave something behind, boy. She left a message. For everyone. You saw how the crowd reacted. Half of them are terrified, and the other half are curious. That's how rebellion starts, with questions. Rebellion." Alex repeated, his voice dropping to a whisper. The old man nodded. "The council rules with fear, but fear only works as long as people believe there's no alternative. The Queen just showed them something different. Hope." Alex frowned. "But what does that have to do with me?" "Everything," the man said, his eyes piercing. "You're part of this now, whether you like it or not. The moment you helped her, you chose a side, and the council doesn't take kindly to those who stand against them." The weight of the words settled on Alex like a heavy cloak. He hadn't thought about sides or rebellions when he'd given the beggar some food. He had acted out of simple kindness, but now it felt like his actions had far-reaching consequences, A sharp whistle interrupted their conversation. A young woman, her face partially hidden by a scarf, approached them with hurried steps. "Is this him?" she asked, her voice low but urgent. The old man nodded. "Aye, this is the lad." Alex blinked in confusion. "Me? What's going on?" The woman glanced around, ensuring they weren't being watched. The Queen's message wasn't just for the council. It was for us, the ones who've been waiting for a chance to fight back. "Fight back," Alex echoed. The woman leaned closer. "You've seen her power. You've seen what she can do. The council fears her for a reason, and now that she's revealed herself, we have an opportunity. But we need people who are willing to stand with her." Alex took a step back, his pulse quickening. "I'm not a fighter. I was just trying to help someone." "And you did," the old man said. "But helping her means more than you realize. The Queen doesn't just need fighters. She needs people who believe in what she stands for." Alex's mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. He wanted to walk away, to return to the quiet life he had known before. But something inside him, the same instinct that had driven him to help the beggar, held him back. "What happens if I don't?" he asked finally. The woman's expression softened. "Then you go back to your life, and maybe the council never finds out about you. But if they do, they won't show mercy." The old man placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. "You've already made a difference, lad. Don't let fear stop you now." Alex looked between them, his chest tight with indecision. The Queen's warning echoed in his mind. Their arrogance blinds them. They forget the balance of power I once held. Finally, he exhaled and nodded. "What do I need to do?" The woman's eyes lit up with determination. "We'll start small. There's a network of people across the sector who've been waiting for this moment. We'll connect you with them." "And then what?" The old man grinned. "Then we show the council that they're not as invincible as they think." As they led Alex away from the square, a sense of purpose began to replace his uncertainty. He didn't know where this path would lead, but one thing was clear. The galaxy was on the brink of change, and he was no longer a bystander. The Galactic Council did not waste time. Within hours of the Queen's mysterious disappearance, the skies above the colony were filled with sleek black ships, their presence a silent yet overwhelming declaration of power. The citizens who had gathered to discuss the events of the day scattered like frightened birds, retreating to the safety of their homes. Alex stood on the balcony of the old man's hideout, gazing up at the ominous fleet. His stomach churned with unease. "They move fast," he muttered. The old man, leaning against the railing beside him, nodded grimly. "They don't tolerate defiance, especially not from someone like her. The council thrives on fear. They'll make an example out of this colony if they think he'll keep the others in line." "But she's not here anymore," Alex argued. "Why send so many ships?" "She embarrassed them," the old man replied. "That's enough of a reason." Down in the streets, the enforcers, armored figures with visors that glinted menacingly in the sunlight, marched through the city. They barked orders, demanding answers from anyone who dared to speak up. The people kept their heads down, but Alex could see the tension in their movements. The Queen's message had planted a seed, and the council was trying desperately to uproot it. A loud knock at the door startled Alex out of his thoughts. The woman from earlier burst into the room, her face pale and her breathing ragged. "They've started taking people," she said, her voice trembling. "Anyone who was in the square when the Queen appeared. They're rounding them up." The old man's face darkened. "Of course they are. Standard procedure. Silence the witnesses, control the narrative." Alex clenched his fists. "We can't just let them do this." The woman gave him a sharp look. "And what do you propose we do? Fight them? We're outnumbered and outgunned." "That doesn't mean we do nothing," Alex shot back. The old man raised a hand, silencing the argument. "Alex is right. We can't let them take these people without a fight. But we need to be smart about it." He turned to the woman. "How many have they taken so far?" "Dozens," she replied. "They're holding them in the central plaza. Looks like they're planning a public display." The old man cursed under his breath. "A public execution, most likely. They want to scare the rest of us into submission." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. The thought of innocent people being killed because they had been in the wrong place at the wrong time was unbearable. He took a deep breath and forced himself to think clearly. "What if we create a distraction?" he suggested. "Something big enough to draw their attention away from the plaza." The woman frowned. "And then what? Even if we free the prisoners, we still have to deal with the enforcers and the ships. That's where the network comes in," the old man said, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. "The Queen's supporters have been waiting for a chance to strike. This is it. We coordinate with them, hit the enforcers in multiple places at once. They can't respond to everything." The woman hesitated. "It's risky. Everything about this is risky," Alex said. "But we don't have a choice." The old man clapped a hand on Alex's shoulder. "You've got the right spirit, lad. Now let's put it to use." The plan. As night fell, the small group sprang into action. The old man used his connections to send messages to the Queen's supporters, rallying them to the cause. The network was vast, stretching across the colony and beyond, and the response was immediate. Fireworks were set off in the outskirts of the city, creating a dazzling display that lit up the night sky. Enforcers were dispatched to investigate, leaving the plaza less guarded. At the same time, power surges in key areas caused chaos in the council's communications. Alex, the woman, and a handful of others crept toward the plaza, their movements swift and silent. The sight that greeted them was chilling. Rows of prisoners, their hands bound and their faces pale, surrounded by armed enforcers. "We'll need to be quick," the old man whispered. "Once they realize what's happening, they'll send reinforcements." Alex nodded, his heart pounding. He had never done anything like this before, but there was no time to hesitate. The group split up, each person assigned a task. Alex and the old man moved toward the prisoners while the others created diversions, drawing the enforcers' attention away from the center of the plaza. The tension was suffocating as they crept closer. Alex's palms were sweaty, and his breathing was shallow. But he kept moving, driven by the knowledge that lives depended on him. When they reached the prisoners, the old man produced a small device that quickly cut through the bindings. The prisoners stared at them in shock and disbelief, but Alex gestured for them to stay quiet. "Follow us," he whispered. "We're getting you out of here." The escape was chaotic. The enforcers quickly realized what was happening and sounded the alarm. But the network's diversions had done their job. By the time reinforcements arrived, the prisoners were gone, scattered into the labyrinthine alleys of the city. As Alex and the others regrouped at the hideout, the old man gave him a rare smile. "You did well, lad," he said. Alex didn't feel like celebrating. The council's ships still loomed overhead, and the threat of retaliation hung heavy in the air. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. The people of the colony weren't as powerless as they seemed, and with the Queen's message as their guiding light, they had a chance to fight back. The Galactic Council was seething. Their carefully constructed web of fear and control was unraveling, and the escape of the prisoners was the final straw. They were not used to defiance, especially from a colony that had always been regarded as insignificant. In the council chamber aboard the flagship, High Commander Virak stood before the assembled leaders. Holograms of council members flickered around the room, their alien faces twisted in anger and frustration. "This cannot go unpunished," one of them bellowed, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "The colony must be made an example of, or rebellion will spread like wildfire." Virak nodded, his face a mask of determination. "I agree, Counselor, but brute force alone will not be enough. If we destroy the colony outright, we risk turning the Queen into a martyr. We must be strategic." Another counselor, her blue-scaled visage shimmering in the light, leaned forward. "And what do you suggest, High Commander? Your enforcers have already failed." Verac clenched his fists. He despised being questioned, but he knew better than to show weakness. "We target the symbol of their hope, the Queen herself. If we capture or eliminate her, the rebellion will collapse." The chamber fell silent for a moment, the council members exchanging uncertain glances. Finally, the eldest among them spoke, his voice low and menacing. "Very well. But remember, Verac, failure is not an option." The hunt begins. The council's fleet descended upon the colony with renewed aggression. Patrols scoured the city day and night, searching for any trace of the Queen or her supporters. Drones hovered overhead, their sensors sweeping every alley and rooftop. The tension in the air was palpable, and the once bustling streets now lay eerily quiet. Alex watched it all from the safety of the hideout, his frustration growing with each passing hour. The people were terrified, and their fear threatened to undo all the progress they had made. "We can't keep hiding," he said, pacing the room. "The council is tightening its grip, and we're running out of time." The old man, seated at a battered table with a map spread out before him, looked up. "And what do you propose we do, lad? March out there and challenge them to a duel?" Alex stopped pacing and took a deep breath. "No, but we can't let them control the narrative. Right now, they're the ones spreading fear. We need to remind the people that they're not invincible." The woman, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "He's right. The Queen's message ignited something in us, but that fire is starting to die. We need to act before it's too late." The old man studied them both, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he nodded. "All right then. Let's give them something to talk about. A bold plan." The group decided to strike at the heart of the council's operation, their command center in the colony's central district. It was a heavily fortified structure, bristling with guards and surveillance equipment. But it was also the source of the council's propaganda, the place where their messages of fear were broadcast to the colony. "If we can take it out, even temporarily, it'll send a message," the old man said. "The council isn't as untouchable as they want us to think." The plan was risky, but they had little choice. The network's supporters mobilized once again, creating diversions and gathering supplies. Alex felt a surge of determination as he prepared for the mission. This wasn't just about striking back at the council, it was about giving the people hope. As night fell, the team made their move. Under the cover of darkness, they approached the command center, sticking to the shadows to avoid detection. The woman led the way, her movements swift and silent. When they reached the perimeter, Alex's heart raced. The sight of the towering structure, its walls lined with guards and automated defenses, was intimidating. But there was no turning back now. Using stolen codes, they managed to bypass the outer defenses and slip inside. The interior was a maze of corridors and control rooms, filled with council personnel. The group moved quickly, planting explosives at key points and disabling security systems. A spark of resistance. The operation was going smoothly, too smoothly. Alex's instincts screamed that something was wrong, and his fears were confirmed when the alarms suddenly blared. "They know we're here," the woman shouted, her voice barely audible over the deafening noise. The team sprang into action, fighting their way through the labyrinthine corridors. Alex's pulse pounded in his ears as they exchanged fire with the enforcers, the flashes of energy weapons lighting up the darkened halls. Despite the chaos, they managed to reach the main control room. The old man began hacking into the system, his fingers flying across the console. "Hurry up," Alex urged, holding off the enforcers with a stolen weapon. "Almost there," the old man muttered. Finally, the screen lit up with a message. "System override successful." The old man grinned. "That should do it. Let's get out of here." As they made their escape, the first explosion rocked the building. Flames and smoke filled the air, and the sounds of panicked shouts echoed behind them. The Council's blunder. The next morning, the people awoke to a stunning sight. The command center, the very symbol of the Council's power, reduced to smoldering ruins. Messages began to spread across the colony, carried by the network's supporters. The Council's grip was weakening, and the people were beginning to believe in the possibility of freedom. In their flagship, High Commander Virak stared at the reports in disbelief. His plan to crush the rebellion had backfired spectacularly. "They're growing bolder," one of his officers said nervously. Virak's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll crush them completely. Prepare the fleet." But as he issued the order, a troubling thought lingered in his mind. The Queen's defiance was spreading like wildfire, and for the first time, the Council's iron grip seemed less unbreakable. The Council's fleet hovered above the colony, their warships casting long, menacing shadows over the city. High Commander Virak stood on the bridge of his flagship, his gaze fixed on the planet below. The command center's destruction had shaken the Council's authority, and Virak was determined to crush the rebellion once and for all. "This ends today," he growled. "Deploy ground forces. Leave nothing standing." As the fleet descended, the colony braced itself for the assault. People took shelter where they could, fear etched on their faces. But deep in the heart of the city, the Queen and her allies were far from idle. A calculated risk. Alex stood in the underground hideout, his heart pounding as he listened to the Queen outline her plan. She spoke with calm authority, her presence commanding even in the face of overwhelming odds. "We can't fight them head-on," she said, her voice steady. "But we can outmaneuver them. The Council thinks brute force will break us, but they underestimate what we're capable of." The old man nodded. "So what's the play?" The Queen turned to a holographic map of the city. "We lure their forces into the industrial sector. The terrain will work in our favor. Narrow alleys, unstable structures. Once they're spread thin, we strike." Alex frowned. "And what about the fleet? Even if we hold off their ground troops, they'll level the city from orbit." The Queen's gaze hardened. "That's where the second part of the plan comes in. We're going to take the fight to them." The decoy. The rebels launched their counteroffensive with precision. Small teams struck at the Council's advancing troops, drawing them into the industrial sector. Explosions and ambushes disrupted their formations, sowing confusion among the ranks. Alex fought alongside one of the teams, his weapon humming as he fired at the enforcers. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. Despite the chaos, he felt a surge of hope. The Council's forces were struggling, their superior numbers rendered useless in the labyrinth of the industrial zone. But this was only the beginning. A bold move. As the ground battle raged, a small group of rebels boarded a concealed ship hidden beneath the city. The vessel, a relic from humanity's early spacefaring days, had been retrofitted for one purpose: infiltration. The Queen herself led the mission, her determination evident in every step she took. Alex was among those chosen to accompany her, and though fear gnawed at him, he couldn't deny the pride he felt at being part of such a daring plan. The ship ascended into orbit, its stealth systems activated. The Council's fleet loomed ahead, their massive warships bristling with weapons. "Stay sharp," the Queen said, her voice calm but firm. "We only get one shot at this." Their target was the flagship, a behemoth of a vessel that served as the nerve center of the fleet. If they could disable it, the Council's forces would be thrown into disarray. Infiltration. The stealth systems held as the rebel ship approached the flagship, slipping past its defenses. They docked in a maintenance bay, the sound of the connection reverberating through the ship. The team moved quickly, their footsteps silent on the metal floor. The corridors of the flagship were eerily quiet, the occasional hum of machinery the only sound. Alex's heart raced as they navigated the labyrinthine interior. He kept close to the Queen, her presence a steadying force amid the tension. They reached their objective, the flagship's main reactor. The Queen's plan was to disable the ship's systems, crippling its ability to coordinate the fleet. As the old man worked to plant the charges, Alex kept watch, his weapon at the ready. The tension was palpable, each second stretching into an eternity. The turning point. The charges were set, and the team began their retreat. But as they neared the docking bay, the alarms blared. "They've found us," Alex shouted. Enforcers poured into the corridors, their weapons firing as they advanced. The team fought back fiercely, their determination outweighing their fear. "Go," the Queen commanded. "Get to the ship." Alex hesitated, but the Queen's unwavering gaze left no room for argument. He joined the others, covering their retreat as they boarded the vessel. The Queen was the last to board, her movements swift despite the chaos. As the ship detached from the flagship, the charges detonated, a massive explosion rocking the vessel. The flagship's systems flickered and failed, the ship drifting helplessly in space. Victory and resolve. The destruction of the flagship sent shockwaves through the Council's fleet. Without their command center, the remaining ships hesitated, their coordination shattered. On the ground, the Council's troops faltered as news of the flagship's fate spread. The rebels seized the opportunity, driving them back and reclaiming the city. As the smoke cleared, the colony erupted in celebration. For the first time in years, the people felt a glimmer of hope. But the Queen's expression remained somber. She knew the battle was far from over. The Council would not take this defeat lightly, and their retaliation would be swift and merciless. Still, she stood tall, her resolve unshaken. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "We've shown them that we won't be broken. Now, we must be ready for what comes next." Alex looked at her, a sense of awe and determination filling him. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew they were fighting for something worth risking everything for: freedom.